We're going over the top 10 commander cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan.
I'm Mia, and I like chopping the sleeves off my t-shirts.
I'm Beezy, and I keep my sleeves on. Thank you very much. We're the Nitpicking Nerds. You can go to Cool Stuff Inc., our sponsor.com, to use code
NERDS
at checkout. When you order the cards that you were going to order anyways, like we all us Magic players do, you save 5%. 5 real money tax dollars.
Cool Stuff, our sponsor.com. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
You can also use the code NERDS there to save 5 whole %.
Yeah, this is 5% on Cool Stuff, 5% on Dragon Shield. If you're using either of these things to buy Magic the Gathering cards, tell them we sent you and you'll save 5%. It's that simple. We're also sponsored by Moxfield, another Magic the Gathering website that you'll see later in the video, but you won't be able to guess where it is.
We're also sponsored by birthdays because happy birthday to everyone whose birthday's today.
Yes.
And your pets.
We got the top 10 commander cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. These are the best ones in our opinions, but they are preceded by 3 honorable mentions because there was so many cool cards in this set.
There were a lot to choose from. One of them that's being talked about a lot is the Millennium Calendar. You're going to want to get 1,000 counters on this, which seems like a lot, but every time an permanent comes untapped during your untap step, you can put 1 counter on it, and you can pay 2 and tap it to double the amount of counters. And if it has 1,000 counters on it, each opponent loses 1,000 life.
Yeah, that's like the coolest thing ever. I just don't know how to break this. It feels like it is only 1 mana though, so like you can play it early. So I'm kind of trying to debate whether, it's 1 mana and then you kind of untap a bunch of times as the game progresses. You don't put much into this. Then you play like a counter doubler and double this twice, and then you can win the game. So like maybe it's good. Probably just a meme, but it's still cool. I also really liked Cresting Mosasaurus. Mia talked me down. I think this probably would have been like my number 5 or something. This is 6 blue for a 4/8. It's got a merge for 6 in a blue, so you can sack a creature to pay less mana for this, and then when it enters, if you cast it, which you probably did, you bounce every non-dinosaur to its owner's hand. I like this. Outside of dinosaurs, this just seems like a sweet card.
I think it definitely is really cool and has that pseudo board wipe, but I think it's also you're a little bit nostalgic over those like Eldrazi days of emerging and all that.
Oh man, this card looks bonkers to me. I don't know. Any deck with like cheap creatures that don't do anything, you can just cast a board wipe for like 2 mana. What's the next one?
Our last honorable mention is Roaming Throne, 4 for a 4/4 ward 2. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. It's that creature type along with its other types, and if a triggered ability of another creature of that type triggers, it triggers an additional time. I really like this because I do like my kindred decks, like the elves and the vampires and all that, but it is a little bit niche for most decks.
Yes, definitely going to go into the kindred decks. That is the new term, by the way. Don't know how you could possibly complain about that one, but I'm a big fan of kindred, and this is like super cool. There's so many different creature types that this is going to trigger, and I think it's really cool. I just don't know. It feels a little niche to me, so we kept it off the top 10. Number 10 is Dauntless Dismantler. This is 1 and a white for a 1/4. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped, and you can pay X white and sacrifice it to destroy each artifact with mana value X. So this is like doing a little bit of blind obedience stuff. It's slowing down mana rocks. It's slowing down artifact creatures. Maybe if they had haste, they're just like blanked for a turn now. And then you can pay admittedly a lot of mana to destroy artifacts, but it does destroy tokens for just 1 mana.
I think there's a lot of potential in this. We were chatting about it, whether we'd see it in more competitive play, but we realized that since there are so many token synergies lately, along with like foods and everything coming in with treasures, like Dockside actually is on the list right now, so you could pop it in a pack, that it's going to be really easy to not let them get those instant activations on their tokens and then just be able to destroy all of them for 1 white mana.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. It really does hose treasures pretty hard. It's like you can't use them, and then before you get to use them, I'm going to blow them all up for 1 mana. It's super sweet. I like this card a lot. I wonder if it'll see more play or if it is like a number 10 fringe kind of card.
Number 9 on our list is Permission Denied. White and a blue for an instant. You counter target non-creature spell, and your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. I think this is interesting because it's not the worst rate for a counter spell to begin with, because we do have those negates for 1 and a blue anyways, but tacking on your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn might be able to bump it to those higher power decks and such.
It's kind of cool. Maybe it's not that good. Maybe it just ends up being like a negate. But I like that this set has a lot of cards where I just go, holy crap, is this insane or terrible? And like, I think this is probably somewhere in the middle as like a nice little blue-white counterspell. Might not be better than Dovin's Veto. but it is cool when it gets the wheels turning.
I think it's going to be one of those cards where you're going to get it played once, someone's going to stop like a big turn-winning, action, something, and you're going to go, oh, this is the best. I have to play this in everyone. It's that one time that really gets you.
And then sometimes the opponent plays like a really good creature like a Grave Titan, and you go, why can't I counter it? Number 8 is the Indomitable. This is 2 blue for a 6/6 vehicle with trample. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card, so it's Coastal Piracy, but it also has Crew 3, and then you can cast it from your graveyard as long as you control 3 or more tapped pirates and or vehicles. So if you're in a pirate deck, well, great, because now you get to cast this from your graveyard. It can't really die, or if you mill it over, it's kind of like drawing a card because you're going to play this later. And if you're in a vehicle deck, same deal.
I like the fact that you can chip in for combat damage if you need, but if you don't want a crew or your creatures actually just have utility on their own, or you just want to attack with them, it can just sit just to be able to draw you cards. Like, I do like that versatility.
Yeah, it's really easy to control 3 tapped vehicles. Also, if you have 3 vehicles in play, odds are you can tap them all. You crew one of them with a creature, then they can just crew each other like as a little cascading thing. So that's not that big of a deal. You do just need them in play. That's probably harder than getting them tapped.
I'm actually a really big fan of vehicles coming out with these effects nowadays because it does stop things like goading and Carter and that sort.
Oh, so vehicles hose that.
Yeah, so if you do have that running around in your meta, throwing in a utility vehicle, I guess you could call it, might be really good just to use those creatures instead of swinging them in and watching them die and not having like triggers for them or something. Just using them, keeping them alive, and then also getting a little bit of value out of them too.
That seems like a card you could easily replace like Biden of Thassa with, or replace Biden of Thassa with this, and then you're like, oh, sweet, and you don't have the force them to attack thing, but you have some other built-in protection against goad and whatnot. What's number 7?
7 is Echoing Deeps. It's a land that says you can have it enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land in a graveyard, except for it's a cave in addition to its other types, and you can tap it to add colorless. I think this is really cool. We like Vesuva here, and the fact that if you're doing a deck that like mills a bunch of cards to begin with, and then you get a land in there, you could just go, okay, well, I don't have to go get it back because I'll just copy it.
Yeah, the difference between this and Vesuva also is that if you don't copy a land, this just enters untapped. It just makes colorless. So if you really need a land this turn, don't worry about it. Just play this as a waste, basically. And then cast your spells. Don't worry about the extra fluff on it. And then if you're like milling Field of the Deads and you're like, copy Field of the Dead, bring back my original Field of the Dead, get 78 zombies.
Are you tossing this into your Field of the Dead so when I destroy it with like Assassin's Trophy, you can bring it back?
Maybe if you stop destroying it, I wouldn't have to put Echoing Deeps in the deck.
Stop making it so good.
It's too good. It's too good of a card. Number 6, we have Kutzil, Melamet Exemplar. 1 white-green for a 3/3. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than its base power deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So the people were like, oh my god, it's Great Abolisher. And I was like, that's cool, but probably won't see play in Commander. And then I read the next ability, and I was like, wait. If I just have a +1/+1 counter on my creature and I hit somebody, I get to draw a card? This is a sweet Commander, but mostly we're talking about the 99. Any counters deck, Aura's deck, this just seems amazing.
I think that this could be really fun in terms of if you're trying to build a deck around like combat tricks or something, you could like replace them pretty easily, especially the ones that are like, oh, get +1/+1 and then draw a card. You could get 2 cards from that, or +2/+1 or something like that. And I think that the first ability, though it won't be too important in the lower to mid power metas, you can get a gotcha here and there. So it's like, oh, counter your spell. You can't. Okay, reveal counter spell.
Yeah. Oops, I dropped this. Yeah, it's a pretty nice ability to have tacked on, even if we're not comboing out. It just shuts off all the removal. And like, if they want to do something, they have to respond to this, and then you just have full information. You're like, okay, I won't go, or like, I know I can go to combat safely, even though I lost my best creature. It's a lot of safety and insurance to have. How about number 5? Another Jurassic World card.
Number 5 is Life Finds a Way, 2-green enchantment that says whenever a non-token creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, populate. I think that I love the token synergies that we're finding in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I think populate's really strong and underplayed, so I think this will be really fun to see.
Yeah, and we were workshopping some infinites with this one. I think if you make a copy of Restoration Angel, which flickers a non-token creature that has power 4 or greater, the creature enters. You populate your Restoration Angel token, which flickers the original creature again, which just keeps populating. So that seems pretty solid to me. So there's like general just token synergies and stuff, but then, hey, if you got a couple extra cards, maybe this is part of like a critical mass combo, and then that makes this card sweet.
It does seem like it's not going to be your game-ending combo. Like, it's not something you'd rush towards, but it does seem like something I would happily stumble into.
Number 4 on our list is a very familiar text box. This is Bringer of the Last Gift, 6 black for a 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, each player sacrifices all other creatures they control. Then each player returns all creature cards from their graveyard that weren't put there this way to the battlefield. This is the fixed text box of Living Death, basically, where you switch your graveyard in and play. And I was just now noticing it doesn't say if you cast it from your hand. So Carador players rejoice.
This isn't a card that I throw into just any vampire deck. I don't think it would really shine in my Edgar deck, for instance. But if you do have a lot of graveyard synergies, I would be really excited to play this.
It is a vampire. I'm just looking at a graveyard and my eyes just grow wide, and I'm like, oh, what can I do? I can bounce this with something, and wait, I can sack all my creatures in response to the trigger and then get them all back like and then all my opponents they're losing everything, and they only get the creatures that were in their graveyard, but they're not a graveyard deck, so it all spirals out of control.
But if we want to talk about really awesome cards, we're going to talk about Moxfield.com, the best place online to build these decks, where you can see the new cards already.
If you're wondering, Bringer of the Last Gift, how many vampires are in my deck? Well, just don't even have to, like on Redacted, you don't have to hover over every card and go, is this a vampire? Is this a vampire? Is this a vampire? Just go to the bottom of the thing, highlight the creature thing, hover your mouse over it, and it'll just say, oh, you have 36 creatures in your deck, and 28 of them are vampires. You're like, whoa, great. That was easy. Moxfield makes things very easy. There's a lot of features like that. Notice that we basically talk about a different one every single day, and we've made hundreds of videos now about Moxfield, and we really haven't run out of stuff to talk about.
I've actually used that feature really recently. I have a Kalia CEDH deck, and I have Cavernous Souls. Kalia's a human, but she also has another type. And so I didn't know what to name. Turns out I have 7 humans in the deck, and I was really easily able to find that with the creature type at Moxfield.com.
Thank you, Moxfield.
But moving on to our actual number 3 is O'Hare Talk, Deepest Foundation. 4 white for a 6/6 vigilance. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead. When he dies, you return him to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control, and it transforms into a land that you can tap to add white, or you can pay 2 and a white and tap it to transform it, only if you've attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn, and only as a sorcery.
So once this thing dies, or you sacrifice it in response to an exile or something, whatever, like you flip it into a land, next turn you can just flip it right back into the token tripler. This feels like, it's not quite Nyx Bloom Ancient E, but it's like very close in the token deck, where if you let them untap with O'Hare Talk, you just die. You're like, oh, there's 36 vampires with lifelink, or 5 million Scoot Swarms or something.
White token decks did not need this. Adeline's already making so much. Alish Norn already is buffing them to the moon. It didn't need this, and yet we are still having so many tokens swarming the field.
Yeah, Anointed Procession and Mondrak Glory Dominus. Now if you have Anointed Procession and O'Hare Talk, you're making, 6 times the amount of tokens?
That's gross.
1 token is 6 tokens? It doesn't even matter what you make at that point. The only thing is, you're not going to copy treasures or anything. You're copying creature tokens. That's cool. That's fine. This is infinite value. I'll take it.
I mean, that's fine, especially if you do have decks that can, polymorph them into something else or transform them, I think there are options.
Next up is our number 2 commander card in the set, and this is honestly probably the least wordy card in the entire set, and it's a mythic rare. It's Bloodletter of Aclazotz, 1 black for a 2/4 flying, and all it says is if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. They really are cutting the mana down on these wound reflections, and this one seems like the best one so far.
I think this has so much potential. I was a little bit iffy in the beginning, considering it's only on your turn, and I'm a little bit spoiled. I love my Archfiend of Despair effects and sorts, but that's a ton of damage that can be thrown around. That's a big lot. That's a big life swing.
I mean, 70% of the damage that you're going to get off of an Archfiend or something is just happening during your turn anyway. And then it's like, well, what if I told you just cut the mana in half and just play a 4-mana 2/4 flyer? And you might not be familiar with this type of effect. If you see this card, you have to kill it immediately, because if they play each opponent loses half of their life, rounded up, target opponent loses half of their life, rounded up, you just die.
That is so much potential. And with all the graveyard synergies I'm seeing in this set to begin with, then you better find some exile for that too.
Yeah, even if they just untap and play a mediocre Torment of Hellfire, you're really just screwed. So this card looks super good, super strong. It's super cheap. I have no complaints.
But for number 1, we actually had to bring in the queen herself, Galta, Stampede Tyrant, 5 green for a 12/12 trampler. When she enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. that is so strong, especially if you do have those types of effects that like draw a card every time a power 4 greater creature comes in, or get some effect whenever you have those big creatures come in. This is going to slap down. You're going to have a fistful of cards. You're going to slap all those down and get so much effect and power on the board.
Yeah, and then you just refill your hand with those cards. I wasn't really thinking about it. That's like the one downside of this card, is that I put all my creatures in play and then I wipe the board. But if the creatures that I put out draw more cards, then it doesn't matter. It's like, cool, I just forced you to play a board wipe with literally one card, and I probably got other value as those creatures entered or left the battlefield. This might be the second simplest card in the set, but there's just no restriction on it. You can turn 1, discard this, and then reanimate it to just put all your creatures in play. It doesn't care. It's not like the bringer where it's like, did you cast this? Did you play fair? They're like, Galta, do whatever you want. I don't care.
This is so scary. I thought the old Galta was good in the command zone, but this, I would be like, oh, I don't think I want to kill that. But then also 2 hits to the face as commander and you're dead.
Yeah, and it has trample. I wasn't even thinking about this as a commander. Oh, I don't like that at all. I think if you see a Galta player, you just have to like totally focus them down. Sorry, you're playing one of the best commander 8-mana abilities I've ever seen, so I have to take you out. This card is going to be great in stompy decks. Any green heavy creature deck probably just wants this. Maybe even Elf Ball. I don't know.
I'm tossing this into Selvala. I'm so excited to see it in action.
It's going to be so nasty. It's kind of funny that they spoiled the best cards so early, but they probably knew what they were doing. Yeah. If you're looking for maybe the precons, those still exist. You might want to get your hands on one of them, but you're thinking, which one should I buy? We have the entire breakdown right here. Just click on it.
Our tip of the day is to salt your water before boiling it for pasta.